Welcome to another episode of Music with the Maestro. I'm Anthony Blake Clark, the music director of Baltimore Choral Arts Society, and I have the great pleasure of welcoming Beth Willer to our program. Hi, Beth. How are you?
Hi, very good. Thank you.
Good. Great. Well, we are really excited to virtually welcome you to Baltimore. As many of you will know, that Beth has been just named the new Director of Choral Activities at Peabody. She's also the Artistic Director of the Lorelei Ensemble. And we're just thrilled to have you in the city. And I think you'll be a wonderful addition to the Baltimore, Washington area. So we're really excited to finally see you in person when that can happen. So if you've chosen to be productive in this shutdown, which you don't have to say that you have been overly productive, but if you have been, what are some of your tips and best advice for getting the music learned, getting stuff done? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think my productivity has gone beyond my musicianship in the last 6 weeks, and I've, obviously been planning for a new time in Baltimore, and really having a chance to meet with colleagues at Peabody through Zoom. And I've also spent a lot of time walking my dog and being in the garden and trying to plan out as far as I can. It's hard to see beyond the next month or so, or even, beyond the current week sometimes right now. Right. So I think, I've had certain creative conversations that have allowed me to look maybe even as far as 2 years out. And that can really be fruitful to, just kind of look past what we're currently in and think about the next big thing. So it's been productive, but also, just a little bit lower key, which always feels good this time of year, especially.
Good. Yeah. Sounds like a nice balance.
Yeah.
So who's a composer that you think our audience should immediately go listen to after this episode is over?
Well, I'm going to name my friend in Baltimore that we were just talking about,
Joshua
Bornfield.
Joshua Bornfield. Yes. Shout out to local talent.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be in Baltimore where he lives, because I'm hoping we can work together again. Josh wrote a set for Lorelei back in 2014 on 19th century American hymn tunes. And I think every time I expose someone to his music, and specifically that set, their mind is sort of blown in the way that he writes for ensemble, but also the individual voices within the group. And so if you haven't heard Josh's music, I would suggest you find it somewhere. If not, on Lorelei's reconstructed album.
Absolutely. Well, actually, we'll post links in the comments to this episode of that and more of Josh's music, because it's fabulous. I completely agree. So, Lorelei Ensemble, tell us what you do, what your mission is, and what you're proud of that you do with that ensemble.
Yeah. So I founded Lorelei in 2007. It's a group of 9 women, myself, plus 3 sopranos, 3 mezzos, and 2 contraltos. Our mission is really about changing the repertoire, elevating women's vocal ensembles, and just crafting a new normal. That's not a great phrase these days, but really shifting the expectations of what a group of women's voices can and will be doing to shape our field and the repertoire. And so we've commissioned more than 50 new works. We have 4 albums. Or we have our 4th album coming out right now. And, the idea is that, just to acknowledge that the repertoire for women's vocal ensembles or treble vocal ensembles has been quite limited, mostly because of cultural limitations and the situations in which women were not allowed to sing, the way that women were not encouraged to use their voice. And so maybe our best composers in the last 700 years didn't write their best music for treble vocal ensemble. And so we are both reclaiming early repertoire that can and maybe even should be sung by women's voices. And then we're, of course, commissioning new music that's changing expectations, hopefully, in terms of sound, color palette, range, text, all of the ways that we, perceive a vocal ensemble. We want to kind of, move out those boundaries.
Sounds really exciting. Now, do you sing with the group, or do you just conduct, or is there a balance?
I do both things. I mean, I'm trained professionally as a conductor, and then I've, of course, sung in choirs my whole life. The rest of the members of the ensemble are trained as soloists and are singing all over the world. But when we're doing something like early music or minimalism, and I'm already on stage with them, I might just step into the group and sing. So there's certain music that I think the experience unconducted is really heightened to remove that visual element of someone leading and showing you the meter, showing you the organization of the pitches, and to really just hear it coming at you without that extra element. So I try to get out of the way when I can.
Awesome. So let's get to some real music now. We're going to listen to some music. The first thing that we'll do is listen to some excerpts of a commission that Lorelei engaged in. Explain to me and break down the piece "Is a Woman in a House" for us.
Yeah, this is a piece that we did with Shapong Liu, who's a fabulous violinist living in Boston, but she's also a composer, and she's worked with some really creative people that are not just working on music, but just working on culture and working on ways to integrate the arts into our daily lives. And Shapong and I knew each other through various, I suppose, just working together. She's worked with my husband, and so I was aware of her work and had heard some of her music when she was working with Evan Ziporyn. And she talked to me about this concept she had where we would take Chinese radicals, so those are the most basic parts of the Chinese language that then are combined to make more complex characters, right? So the radical is the most basic unit of a character, and the symbol for peace is a woman in a house, right? And so this identity of Lorelei as women sort of makes you ask questions also about what that means and what cultural implications there are in saying, yes, if I've got a woman and I keep her in my house and she's taking care of all that I need within the house, then I as a man can be at peace. Perhaps that's where that comes from. I mean, these are very ancient symbols. And so Shapong really wanted to play with that. And she met not only with members of Lorelei, but also members of the greater community to say, if you were to take, she gave us a sheet with, let's say, 20 radicals on it. And she tells us what each of these radicals means. And she says, combine these in any way that you want to create the character for peace. And so we had an opportunity to really explore how we would personify peace, or not even personify it, but just represent it with these other more basic elements. And then she tells us that the actual character is a woman in house. And so the opening movement of this is really combining the symbols that we came up with as an ensemble to represent peace. And then we're working with this incredible Chinese calligrapher. He's an artist and he does giant calligraphy, sometimes on sidewalks or wherever he is, in a way that he's in the community making that art. And he's painting live behind us, and did workshops with us so we could understand some of the art of what he does. So it was a really fantastic, about year-long collaboration to really get this piece conceived of.
It sounds amazing, and what I like about it is how you guys were able to construct it yourselves in a way.
Yeah, and that's just the first movement I'm talking about. I mean, the rest of it dives more into Shapong's personal story and an experience her mother had in her marriage. And it's a complicated and deep diving piece. Cool. And it starts from this concept that I just explained.
That's amazing. So let's listen to a little bit of it and watch the video, and then we'll come back.
Oh
Wow. So the semi-staged nature of this movement is really useful for conveying meaning to me. I mean, how did you go about organizing the combination of, movement and music and the visual elements of the calligrapher to sort of
Yeah.
make something come across to the audience?
Well, I'll start practically saying both Shapong and I learned a lesson in this that we should probably also hire a director so she and I don't hold that piece. In the case of this,
Right.
a lot of it was Shapong's vision and how she imagined it being presented. I mean, she had certain elements of that in the score, and then we experimented with that in person. Some of it was more possible than other things that she had imagined, and then the work with Mike May, the calligrapher, of course, was something that you can only practice so many times, and it's going to be different every time. And and the other part I really remember working on and trying to figure out how we would do it was when we were simultaneously drawing these characters, and how all facing backstage we would find a way to put that together. And so then I ended up standing as far upstage as possible, and I sort of prepped the beginning of every character, and we found a way to do that together.
So cool. Well, maybe we can check out the rest of it later someday. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we're going to talk about is a composer more generally, maybe for a moment, which is Dufay. Now, our audience should know that he's a French composer, 15th century, very influential. And actually, what's funny to me is unlike some composers that we revere now, this guy was extremely well known in his day, right? I mean, he was this is a really crude comparison, but he was kind of the John Rutter of France, right? I mean, he basically invented a style called faux bourdon. And anything you want to add before we take a listen to some of your music?
I think the music that we did, particularly on our Impermanence album, is striking because there's two types of pieces that we have, and one is a more archaic style, the isorhythmic motet, which is really looking and following in the footsteps of people like Akagem, right? And then he has this more forward-thinking cantilena style, which I don't know which one we're going to listen to, but the cantilena style is actually much more free in terms of harmony and in terms of form, and it's quite modern. And what's really interesting is that it's not that he was writing isorhythmic and then one day he decided I'm going to do this more forward-thinking thing. He actually was, these two styles, the old and the new, were coexisting, and some of those cantilenas were written before some of the isorhythmic, and some of them were written after. And I think the whole expanse of Dufay's motets, which this is the sacred repertoire, is some of the most diverse and forward-thinking repertoire, not only in his collection of writing, but of the entire 15th century. I mean, it's really the transition he makes in his own writing is remarkable.
Interesting. So I think we're going to listen to Flos Florum, if that's okay.
Right. Yes.
So let's give it a listen.
Stay
So your ensemble is just incredible and an exquisite. What strikes me when I listened to that was the expertise and the finite nature of your tuning. Do you think about tuning a lot? And of course, does it change with different styles of music? And what's your philosophy on harmony and tuning together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a very different thing to tune a one-on a part ensemble, and
Yeah.
it's a very different thing to tune to a contralto than it is to tune to a tenor.
Ah,
Right. So in that trio, the bottom voice is written probably more typically to be performed by a tenor voice. I mean, certainly women weren't singing this music.
sure.
And so when you put a contralto on the bottom, in this case, that's Stephanie Kakianis, and the overtones, that's sending into the room, that's a different thing to tune to than if that had been a tenor voice. And these singers, again, Stephanie and then Claire McNamara and Margot Rude,
I love Margot.
yeah, they had sung, and she also lives near Baltimore. She's in DC. They had sung this piece together quite a bit. In fact, this is one of the Dufay motets that we started singing, I think, as early as 2013 together, well before we recorded this album. And so I think they begin to hear each other's color in a way that really improves the tuning after having sung together for that long. My approach with Lorelei is to brighten the bottom and to allow the top to be warmer and sometimes more full. And I think we can often hear something very different in that we allow the bottom voices in an ensemble to be a little freer, maybe have a little bit more vibrato, and really allow that to be a darker tone. And then we ask for a more focused vibrato-less tone on top. And I'm a little bit the opposite of that with Lorelei. I think that is part of what allows the color of the vocal ensemble to be more honest, and also for the tuning to have more clarity. I could talk about intonation on a deeper level, but
Love that harmonics and the
right,
sort of whole harmonic scale is just really incredible.
Yeah, and I do think, again, it's just you don't hear the overtones of treble voices as clearly, right? So there has to be a different awareness of tuning and where that third sits, a major third versus a minor third, or the fifth being a little bit higher, and really tuning vertically in that way, while maintaining, your horizontal direction, which in something like Florum, I mean, that is so florid and so horizontal. And really the bottom voices are following that melodic line that is, slipping through your fingers the whole time. So.
Wow, sure. Lots of things to think about. Well, Beth Willer, thank you so much for joining us. And we, like I said, we're really excited to someday in person welcome you to our city. We love Baltimore, Washington area, and I think you will too. And it's been super fun catching up with you and talking about music. Thank you again for joining us.
Great, thank you. I can't wait to be in Baltimore.
Awesome. Everyone tune in next week. You don't want to miss next week's episode. We're going to have Patrick Quigley, and we're talking about English Baroque music. Until then, keep the music going and stay safe.